Welcome to ComSpark. Today we are here in Columbus, Ohio. My name's Bryan Kaiser, and I'm on the Executive Host Committee for ComSpark, and I will be your guest host today. Today I'm here with Branndon Kelley from AMP. He's the CIO over there, and looking forward to having a great conversation here.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, thanks. So Branndon, what type of technology disruption is AMP and the electric utility industry facing right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Brian. So you take an industry that for basically 100 years was static. Power plants, generation stations would create electrons, put them on wires, and then consumers or in residential or commercial customers would consume those, and then there was really no intelligence in between. And so that's why you probably in your past you would be like out of electricity, and the only way the electric utility would know that is if you picked up the phone and called. That's changing. I mean, and that change has probably started 10, 15 years ago. I mean, an overused word, the smart grid, really started bringing that in. And so now what we have is a lot of information between the generation to ultimately who's consuming that. And that's all driven by technology. So an industry that had very little technology and who used to preach a lot about being air gapped and not necessarily need what we call information technology is being completely driven. So now we know where that electron is, and when there's outages, we have the ability to do self-healing. We have the ability to use information to help drive energy efficiency, things of that nature. So that's kind of one of the pieces when you look at it from a technology perspective. The other thing is from an information technology perspective, if you look at it from just technology in general, I mean consumer side generation. So people are putting solar panels on their roof. They're looking at and deploying more and more electric vehicles. That's really disruptive because it's hard for us as the utility to predict and understand what is out there. And so what that relies on us is to have sensor type applications out there where we can bring data and understand. And so we're really being data driven, not only by our need to operate a utility more efficiently and effectively, but also because our consumer base wants to they want to take part in whether it's supplying themselves or green initiatives. And so the real challenge for us is as an entity that services cities and municipals that own and operate their own electric system as all sizes, is how can we as an organization help the smallest of the cities to the largest of our cities respond to that challenge. Those things are complex, they're expensive, and they're very risky. And so what we do is we try to take and lower complexity and risk, and then give them these technologies in a way that allows them to ultimately pass the benefits back to their customers.
Great. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges you're facing besides this type of disruption that you're seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we face, and I guess probably every industry would say this, is around cybersecurity and what is the most appropriate measures and cost and investment that we should do. Everybody has a story to tell on how many attacks they're dealing with every day and the threats. And so we have those too. But, I try to focus beyond that and say, okay, so what we do know is we can spend an infinite amount of money defending ourselves, and it's only going to take the lowest incident to break that money. So I try to prepare our team, much like many of my peers do. We have to take a approach of not if, but it's going to happen, and when and how are we going to respond, and at the same time making sure we're communicating to my boss, the CEO, as well as our board of those issues, not only so they understand where the spend is and where we're directing funds and where we're assuming some level of risk, but also since our board is made up of cities and townships, villages, municipals, boroughs throughout 9 states, is to help them with their posture and make sure they're doing the right thing. So we have created a number of initiatives to actually go in and help the individual communities that otherwise are underserved or they're served by folks that don't quite understand the municipal electric systems.
Okay. So cybersecurity. So as you're looking at contributions that you're doing personally to the organization, what are some of the biggest contributions?
There's a lot of technology that I've been there now 10 years, and that's and I was just recently thinking about this, and I think the industry average is about 4 years and change to stay in a role like myself. So some say that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a reflection of my team's continuous work to kind of move the cheese, if you will. I think the biggest contribution that I've made at AMP is, and it's been something I've done throughout my career, and it's really it's really to drive employees and employment engagement with the organization. And specifically, one of the things I did when I joined is really put an emphasis on us. Let's get some interns in here, some people that are fresh out of college, and let's really drive them into my group, into the organization to do do contributions. And so I look back in my career, and I was thinking about this recently. It's like, today, for example, my IT director, actually, if you go back 10 years ago, joined me at another organization as an intern. And, and I spent a lot of time with him and his career early on, and then he left and went and worked for some large companies that are here in town. And then, we brought him back in a couple years ago when we needed that gap filled. And so now he's contributing at, one of the highest levels in our organization. Specifically to AMP, I have two people now that are, one of them works on our SCADA team, which is the team that kind of works with our systems that help control our grid and our power plants. I mean, that was an individual we brought in as an intern, and we challenged him a lot, gave him a lot of leeway to learn and make mistakes. And now he's within a 3 years' time, he's a very high contributing person. So throughout my career, I was just recently thinking about this, as I mentioned, and I mean, there's a good 30 or 40 people that are really here locally and even nationally playing at the highest level in those organizations. And it really came out of a foundational ability that I thought when I was at that point in my career, there was a real gap. And so I think my best contribution to AMP isn't necessarily the tactical or even the strategical things that we've accomplished, but it was the mindset of building an organization that continues beyond me and my staff. My CEO likes to say this all the time. He says you hire the best people and you get out of the way and let them do your job. And that's something that I always have done as well. And so I really feel that's my biggest accomplishment.
That's good. So what are you most proud of?
The thing I'm most proud of is when I joined the organization in 2009, it was an organization that was going through a lot of growth and change. So we had undertaken a large set. We were building 4 brand new run-on-the-river hydro plants. We were in the middle of participating in the construction of a coal-fired plant in southern Illinois as we were building, and ultimately started finishing a combined cycle plant. So you're talking billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of construction projects. And so we put a lot of, and the organization itself, to a certain extent, because it wasn't a generation company, had underinvested in IT. So I spent a lot of time focusing on, this is kind of the end goal, and this is where we're building these assets, and we have to put a wrapper around this, not only cybersecurity, but analytics and just systems in general. So I'm very proud of that. But I think probably the thing that I'm most proud about at AMP and doing is, so our organization is based on joint action. So it's cities, townships, municipals, villages, boroughs that own and operate their own electric system. And any individual one of those on its own doesn't have the ability necessarily to get the best deal on power supply. So it was created 40 plus years ago, 47 years ago or so now, to bring those together. So jointly we are large, individually we're not necessarily. So I took that concept at the board's strategic direction, working with my CTO, Jared Price, and we built programs that allowed us to apply that same thought process to technology. So if you look at our AMI, which is Advanced Metering Infrastructure, you might hear it as Smart City or Smart Grid. We took that technology, so we were able to build a program that leverages the exact same technology the city of Chicago is using, Paris, many others, and we could scale that down and be able to deliver it to the smallest of cities. So cities like Ephrata, Pennsylvania, Seaford, Delaware, Milford, Delaware, Cary, Ohio, Painesville, Ohio, all these cities that would have either not been able to deploy at all, struggled to deploy, or deployed and on top of that, deployed a lesser technology because it just didn't scale down to that level, now can take advantage of that and ultimately be able to give to their residents all the benefits and features and functions that come with that type of technology. Really and then not only do we help them get it deployed, then we run and operate that for 10 years, because anybody that's in this business, even us CIOs, know it's very hard to retain talent, even in a big city like Columbus. Imagine yourself in a small village here in Ohio. And so we run and operate that back office, that IT piece for them, so they can really, I like to say this, we turn down that noise, the noise of the vendors not delivering, the noise of the technology needing refreshed, the noise of cybersecurity and all that stuff. We turn down that noise so they can focus on what matters, which is delivering low cost, reliable electricity to their residents, as well as now with this smart city canopy, all the other features and sensor type ideas that they can do. So I think that would be
Sure.
the thing I'm most proud of,
Yeah.
of my time at AMP.
That's awesome. So do you have any advice for any new or future technology leaders?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I have always done is invest the time to learn as much as I can about whatever industry I'm in. I think the credibility at the table, understanding the challenges or the market of my peers, whether it's our CFO or CEO or people in operations or people in compliance, legal, whatever it is, understanding as much as I can about that and allowing me to apply technology to help them solve problems helps bring a lot of credibility. The other area I would get is, the other advice I would get is get out of the way of credit. And so I see a lot of people in my career that were credit hungry. They would work on projects or something and it would be to take on credit. And they get accolades and they get things, but what I've always done is focused on delivery, micro-focused on delivery, and making sure that I'm consistent in delivering and that we don't overpromise and then pass or give the credit to the others. I mean, one of the things, I guess, good, bad, or indifferent about me is that I don't necessarily like to pound my chest a lot within the organization. I let the people underneath me get that credit. And so, for example, we have a board meeting every month, which, many people are going to say that's kind of intense or insane. I let the folks that work for me get in front of the board and talk about when time permits. Sometimes we're on short schedules, but I want them up there talking about the projects and the successes we had because I'm confident in my place in the organization. And so this allows them to help build their confidence in the organization that people know that they are contributing. So my advice would be understand the business. Got to be good at the technology. You got to understand how to apply the technology, but your real job at the table is to really understand the business and apply value, and then make sure that you are focused on the organizational goals and it's a team as a whole, and highlight those people behind you or beside you, or even in front of you, which may be even the best advice, to further your career and make yourself invaluable to the organization.
Really good insights. Appreciate your time. We've run out of time, unfortunately. I wish we could keep unpacking more, but great wisdom there. Thanks for joining us today on ComSpark TV. For more about ComSpark, please visit comspark.tech. We are here with Branndon Kelley, CIO of American Municipal Power, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.